Good morning YouTube, how you going? Welcome back to The Average Garage. In today's episode, we're going to be putting some brake pads in the Pajero Sport. So, I've picked up some Bendix from my local shop and I'm just going to grab some tools from in the shed where I am now, take them into the garage and let's dive straight into it. Quickly before we jump into the Pajero Sport, I want to say a massive thank you to everybody who's supported me so far. I have just turned on super thanks on the channel, so if you do find this video or any other videos helpful, please consider supporting the channel with a super thanks. I think you get to leave like a quirky, colourful comment down below. Anyways, let's jump into the garage. We're going to go fix the Pajero Sport. So first of all, I've got the tools and stuff associated here. So you've got your jack, your stand. I've got two boxes of brake pads, which those are the part numbers, even though they're upside down for you guys. Got my basic toolkit and my rattle gun. So first of all I'm going to do, I'm going to work one corner at a time. I'm going to jack the car up and support it with a safety stand, and then we'll show you what to do from there. Right, so we're in the garage. I'm an absolute dickhead and I butchered the first one, so I'm going to record the second one for you at the front and then we'll move on to the rear. But yeah, hopefully I don't butcher this one. First step, we're going to jack the car up, put a safety stand under it and remove the wheel. Okay, so the wheel is off, the brake caliper and rotor are visible. So if you're just checking the brakes and you're not so much replacing them, you can see through this inspection port here, or it's not really an inspection port, maybe a breather, I don't know. Either way, if you have a look through there and my camera focuses, that's the brake pad. So the material on the left where that little spring is crossing over, and the backing plate on the right. And if you look through the top here, you should be able to see what material is left in there. So all we need to do is remove this bolt here and this bolt here. These are both 17mm. They're not actually bolts, they are, but they aren't. They're actually the slide pin as well as the bolt. So we're going to take them out, put them somewhere clean, and we're going to clean them up anyways, and then we can remove the caliper. Then we grab the caliper and simply just slide it off. You can let it hang on the brake hose. It's not the best practice, but you can let it hang. Just don't let it drop onto the hose. You can just let it rest lightly there. If you want to be overkill, you can tie it up or hoik it up somewhere out of the way. You got here the little springs. These spread the brake pads off the rotor. It keeps drag to a minimum and yeah, stops some grinding and squealing while you're driving along. So you simply wiggle them out one side at a time, and then put them where you're not going to forget to put them back in. Brake pads, give them a bit of a wiggle. Because I've been off-road, it's covered in crap, so everything's a bit tight, but your brake pad comes off. Make note of where this squeal tab goes, so the rotor spins into the squeal tab on the piston side, not the caliper side. So discard them when you get it out. Just giving a bit of a brake clean to where the slides. Right, we've swapped camera because the other camera just died, so now we're back on, well, now we're on the GoPro. So you would have just seen probably I've just sprayed a bit of brake cleaner on it. That's mainly on these slides here where the brake pad goes into. It's just to help clean out any crap that's in there because a whole lot of dust came out from everywhere else. So you want these to be as clean as they possibly can. Some kits come with new slides. This kit did not, but no biggie. Right, so what you're going to do is chuck your wear indicator, like we were saying, on the leading edge of the pad, just like that. That's going to slide in, quite like that. Other one. Slides in. Hopefully that wasn't too shaky because the camera was literally on my knee. So now what we're going to do, spring clips in. It's very hard to hold because I don't have a tripod on this camera. Alright, so the brake pad spreaders are in. Now what we're going to do I've just got some anti-seize here. And all I'm going to do is put about that much in each one of these boots, so that when the slide goes back in, it's got some anti-seize in there. So it only needs a tiny bit. Now, one I prepared earlier is the bonnet's popped and the brake fluid reservoir cap is off. So what I'm going to do, very slowly, I'm going to push these pistons back in. I could probably do it by hand if I tried. I'm too weak, can't be bothered. I've got tools for that. So I use big multi-grips. There are proper tools for it, I just don't have it, nor do I care. And you just slowly push the pistons back in. You've got to be slow, and you've got to make sure the cap is off the brake fluid reservoir, otherwise they can pop off and cause a mess. So we're just slowly pushing it back in. It's better if you've got somebody up there watching, making sure it's not overflowing, so you don't have to wash your engine bay. Nice and slowly, you don't want to go too quick, otherwise it'll push another piston out. So if I push this one in quick, see the other one starts to pop out. That's what you don't want. And guess who has to wash his engine bay? Because it's overflowed. Great. That's why it's best to have somebody sitting there watching. It's not the best colour looking either, or the best looking colour, so eventually I'll replace it. So with that happened, now as soon as I'm done with this side, I will drive the car back out and I'll hose out all the engine bay. Brake fluid will eat through paint, it will rust steel, it will do all sorts of nasty shit, so you've got to get onto it pretty quick. So yeah, now pressure's on, I'm gonna put this all back together while filming it and get that sorted. All right, so this might be a little bit zoomed out or shaky because it's on my knee, so let's hope for the best. We're going to put the caliper back on. We're going to be paying attention not only to where making sure everything's going in straight, but we've got to watch these boots as well without getting anti-seize everywhere. I'm not doing a good job. This anti-seize gets absolutely everywhere. Now that started, sorry if that was shaky, I apologize. Anyways, you've also got to make sure that these spreaders for the brake pads don't flick into this little hole, otherwise it'll cause dramas. So you've got to make sure they're both sitting under the caliper. Then you've got to put the caliper on, then you've got to move the rubber bits out of the way, or the boots, so then you can get the freaking thing started. It's a bit of a fiddle. If you don't feel comfortable doing it, definitely take it to a professional. But anyways, we're going to do these up. These are 88 Newton meters, give or take 5. And yeah, use a torque wrench. Don't be silly about it. Right, that is one side installed. I've already done the other side, like I said, but I've butchered it. So now we're going to move on to the rear. Right, now a big thing is not only make sure the fluid is topped up before you drive or before you even start the car, but the second thing is make sure you pump the brake pedal as soon as you start the car. Don't go foot floor all the way to the floor. Give it a good couple of half pumps until that pedal becomes firm again. Because if there is, there's essentially free play and slack now between the pad and the piston, or the pad and the rotor, that the piston's gonna have to make up for by putting the fluid back down there. Now it's not air, so it doesn't need bleeding, but there is a gap there, so the fluid has to essentially fill up the pistons in the caliper again. So make sure you pump the pedal before you go for a drive. All right, so we're moving on to the rear of the car now. I've just washed the engine bay down after the first disaster. This is the part number for the rears for mine. However, it is obviously worth double checking with your car because there is 2 listings for the front pads, so you've got to find out which ones you have. I don't know when they changed or why or if or what, but there was 2 listings at Repco, so I've got the ones that obviously suited mine. So yeah, it's definitely worth checking. But we're going to tear the rear wheel off and get into the rear brake pads now. Right, so there is a bunch of spring clips in here. These pads are actually quite simple to get out. You don't need to take off the caliper, unlike the fronts. So there is one little spring tab in here which holds both these pins in. Once you undo that, those pins slide out, and then you can just simply pull the pads straight out. You know, we're going to make sure I don't flood this again. Alright, so these brake pads already have the wear tab or the wear indicator fitted. So if we look at the old pads, the wear indicator was on the leading side of the piston. Therefore, that is that one right there. Move the caliper over, bit of persuasion. Both those in. These holes, bit of a clean. Pins, bit of a clean. So when putting the pins in, try and make sure the hole for that retainer clip is easily accessible. You want to put the anti-rattle clips back in. That one I probably should have done first. It's a little fiddly, but it's all back together. All right, so we got all those clips in, it's all back together. So now when we put the foot on the brake, it's gonna take up the slack in here. So that's why you have to pump the brake pedal before you move. But now we're gonna jump onto the other side, do that, and then I'll give you a little wrap up. Okay, so all four corners are done now. There's new brake pads throughout. So what we're gonna do is go for a quick drive. Gonna get up to about 60 Ks and then brake firmly. I'm not gonna try and lock it up or anything. I'm not gonna brake until a complete stop. I just wanna brake firmly until about 5-10 Ks, back off. Repeat that about 3 times and they should be bedded in nicely by then. And lastly, some key points. As I said before, make sure before and after you start the car, pump the brake pedal multiple times until it feels like a nice solid brake pedal again, and make sure you keep an eye on the fluid level the whole way throughout the process. Make sure it doesn't get too low and make sure it doesn't overflow like it did with mine. If it does overflow though, just wash it out. clean water, just tap water, just wash it out completely and thoroughly. You don't have to soap it or scrub it or anything like that. Just make sure you dilute it with a shit ton of water. So yeah, happy going. If you don't feel comfortable doing it, obviously get a mechanic to do it. It's not a hard job. They shouldn't charge the world for it, but some cars can be tricky. Some cars need the ECU to be tinkered with as far as scan tools for brake pads and stuff like that, but I think that's mainly Mercedes and BMWs and that. Anyways, thanks for watching. Again, if the video has helped you, please like the video, subscribe, and yeah, if you feel it's helped you a bunch, feel free to check out the Super Thanks or the Patreon. Cheers guys, see you all in the next episode. Thanks.